So guys, we got deliveries to talk about and very unfortunate subscriber that took a 120,000 US dollar loss on his NIO stock position. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what kind of psychology or mentality you should have perhaps when you're holding something like NIO stock. So first of all, deliveries, 3,800 registrations for NIO last week, and then on top of that you got Envo with 1,020. Envo is still gradually ramping up, and of course Envo CEO is guaranteeing that in December you're going to get over 10,000 deliveries that month, and by March you're going to have over 20,000 deliveries in March. So with that in mind, I think they're doing all right still. But one thing you guys got to really remember is 3,800. And on paper, it's much lower than Xpeng, much lower than Zeekr, much lower than Xiaomi. But once again, I got to remind everybody that NIO is not the mass market brand. Envo is the mass market affordable car. Gradually, you'll see the situation flip where Envo outsells NIO. Envo is supposed to outsell NIO, okay? Because Envo is the more affordable car. NIO is the very unaffordable, much more extremely expensive car. So in that sense, considering that, NIO selling 3,800, that's still a very, very good achievement going forward, okay? And it will eventually flip, that's guaranteed, that Envo will sell more than NIO. And so will be the same with Firefly. When Firefly launches, that's going to be even more mass market, even more affordable. Firefly is supposed to sell more than Envo, which is supposed to sell more than NIO. That makes sense, okay? So gradually, you got to get used to, NIO just maintaining about roughly 3,800 or 3,000 to 4,000 range per week. And that's still a very good achievement, okay? And gradually, you're going to see Envo just reach the next level in terms of deliveries. So I'm not too concerned about that at all. I think these numbers are fantastic. And overall, add together 4,800. That's like 5,000 deliveries in a week. Pretty nice, pretty nice. And you're still on track to potentially get 20,000 this month. And I believe NIO as a collective group, NIO plus Envo, will probably get 20,000 again this month. So no problem with that. Now let's talk about the subscriber with the $120,000 NIO stock loss. So here's what he wrote. He wrote, after 4 years, I sold my 20,000 NIO shares for a $120,000 loss with the announcement of 1,000 Envo stores and expansion to 25 countries by the end of 2025. I see more dilution and downward pressure. And also, he's noted that Xiaomi is set to sell 130,000 cars this year and has outdone NIO, and he believes that NIO has an execution problem going forward. And he sold his stock for a big loss. What is my reaction to this? Well, first of all, why did you first invest in NIO? For of course, the future outlook of the company, right? You're very bullish for the future outlook of the company. Has that really changed regardless of the stock price change? The stock price changing doesn't change what the company's doing, okay? So if that's still valid, now should actually be the time that you should be buying, all right? Not financial advice, but, right? But unless you think the future outlook has changed. Now, let's talk about the future outlook with 1,000 Envo stores. He thinks this is very, very bearish, 1,000 Envo stores. But the thing you got to understand, NIO right now has a very big footprint with all its stores. But NIO, like with deliveries, NIO's price is relatively unaffordable to the masses because it's very expensive. But with Envo is the car that almost everybody can afford. So you're going to have a situation where in those tier 4 and tier 5 cities, most people can't afford a NIO, but they definitely do have the budget to afford an Envo car. And that is why they are going to be building so many different stores in all those different cities. You can have an Envo store in a smaller city where it doesn't even make sense for a NIO store to be there. And also, you got to think of it as this is going to help us get more sales, and not the thinking that this is an expenditure and this is a loss. All right, that's the kind of mentality you got to change. Not that, oh my God, I'm spending money to build the store, it's going to be a loss. Think about, oh, I'm going to build that store and that could get us a ton of sales. That's how you should be thinking. And of course, sales aren't guaranteed, but remember the fact that even with NIO and of course with Envo, they have very strict sales metrics. The NIO managers, the Envo managers, they are busy like hell. They're not just sitting around drinking coffee out all day. They have metrics that they gotta meet. And if they don't meet those KPI targets, they face the risk of either being fired or the entire store being closed. And it's not out of the ordinary to see a NIO store being closed down for poor performance. It has happened. I've seen NIO stores being closed down because they don't sell a lot of cars. It doesn't make sense for them to have a store there. Okay, so they do those things, right? If a store sells well, okay, we're gonna keep that store, of course, right? If it doesn't sell well, why still have that store there, right? It doesn't make sense. So they're continuously optimizing their stores. It's not just they're gonna build a store and then like, and then let it just be and do whatever it wants to do. No, so it's gotta generate some returns. Otherwise, they're gonna pull out of that. Okay, so that's the number one thing. And number two, Xiaomi's cars are relatively cheaper than NIO's cars, all right? Xiaomi's cars are roughly about 2/3 the price of the base price of a NIO, okay? Just to keep that in mind. And of course, other NIO vehicles up the line, like ES8, etc., can be up to twice the price of a Xiaomi car. So that's something you got to understand. And don't forget, Xiaomi said that they're eventually going to join in on battery swap. Right? And Xiaomi CEO is also an investor in NIO as well. So once they join in on battery swap, the more cars they sell, the more beneficial it is for NIO, right? So that's down the line as well. But with this situation, I really gotta rewind the clock a bit, back to like 2018, 2019. And this was even before I bought my NIO, before I started making videos. And I was following NIO, I was following NIO stock on the Yahoo message boards. And even back then, I remember quite vividly, there was this one person who bought NIO stock at the high 6 and 7s. So he bought a lot of NIO stock. He was very bullish with the future outlook of the company. And unfortunately, he bought it on margin. And then when the stock price, back in 2018, 2019, the stock price dipped. It went down to about $3. And he was unfortunately faced with a margin call. And of course, he shared this on the Yahoo message boards, and he talked about his margin call. He was debating whether or not to sell his position or to double down. So double down meaning sell, like mortgage his house, and then use that money to buy more NIO stock. And well, of course, none of us were qualified to give him any advice, but he chose the latter. He chose to sell his house, take that money, and buy more NIO stock. And that was when NIO stock was in the $3 range. And then, well, what happened afterwards? NIO stock cratered down to 1 point something, all right, $1-ish. And unfortunately, that guy got margin called and he lost all his money. He lost his position. No more position, no more money, no nothing left. And what happened afterwards? We got the historic run up all the way up to $60 per share. All right. Moral of the story: don't buy on margin. All right. Don't buy on margin. But you have a situation where, he was sort of correct with the future outlook of the company, but then the stock price really scared him. The fluctuations in the stock price really scared him and forced him to sell his position. And in this case, the brokerage forced him to sell his position, and he was out of the company. And and then you had that historic rise. And I guess my non-financial advice to everybody that's holding NIO stock and considering to sell or considering to buy, do what you got to do, all right? But make sure that you can accept the fact that the stock might go the other way, right? Accept the fact that if I sell, the stock might go 10x in the next year. Very possible, 10 or 20x in the next year. And accept the fact that if I buy, the stock may potentially go down even lower, right? You have to accept this fact and not live with that consequence, that feeling of regret. So don't regret whatever you're going to do. If you're going to do it, be willing to accept the fact that, I might be wrong doing this position, all right? Both upwards and downwards. If I buy the stock right now, perhaps it might go down, but you should be okay with that if you're going to buy the stock. If you're going to sell the stock, you should be okay with the fact that, hey, I sold it and the stock went flying, and you should be okay with that. Okay? So that's what the big takeaway is from this. And this subscriber, I really hope that I wish him the best. All right? And if he's going to invest in other positions, I hope he has a prosperous future. But I know for a fact that NIO is going to do well, in my personal opinion. All right, in my personal opinion, NIO is going to do well. NIO has very solid backing from not only the CYVN from UAE, but also the Chinese government. And they have so many partnerships. Their technology is worth a lot of money. And in my opinion, even if that day comes where things get tough and NIO is on the brink of bankruptcy, which I don't think will ever happen, but if it does, there will be tons of companies willing to scoop up NIO just for the patents. Okay? So there's no risk. NIO is a very valuable company. Their technology is very valuable. In terms of execution, look, down the line, Envo is going to surpass NIO's deliveries. It's inevitable. Okay? It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Firefly is going to surpass Envo's deliveries. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. The problem is, do you have the patience to wait until that happens? Right? That's a big question. Okay? Deliveries, I'm not worried about deliveries at all. Okay? NIO's not supposed to deliver more than Envo. It's less affordable compared to Envo. Okay? So do what you got to do and live your life and be happy. Right? As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.